Well, he has impressed. He has impressed. And I know that many Kiwis love to hate him because he had those digs at Dean Barker and us back in San Francisco and so on. But he's become a really important leader in this team. He has brought a sort of steely determination, a real focus and a discipline to the team that's been very important in their success today.
Well, that's what I thought he brought in San Diego, was he never gave up. They couldn't sail their boat. They were having a terrible time, but he never gave up. And then there was a couple of, lucky breaks with wind and, the race timing out, and he just kept pushing.
Right. Mark, we've got to go there. Professor Mark Orams there. Thank you very much. We'll get you back again next week. Catherine Robinson, Chris Regatta, you've been wonderful this afternoon. Don't buy the ute, people are saying here, but do love Hawke's Bay. Many things to do.
Thank you.
I'm Wallace Chapman, back Monday. See you.
Hey, good night.
Whakarongo mai koe ki te reo ingarangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere ake nei, boxer Joseph Parker comes out swinging after he's named as the sportsman allegedly connected to an international meth trafficking ring. Nothing to do with me, he says, and he's never been charged. Auckland's finally back at alert level 1 and we're live from the Viaduct as hordes of people flock to the city's bars and restaurants. And the tweet that ruffled feathers ahead of the big announcement. The super city gets $31 billion for feet-focused transport along with ferries and buses. How to harvest more orchard workers, apple growers cry out for extra pickers despite offering at least $20 an hour. Is our reporter Tom Kitchen up to the job? It is crunch time.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leatawa tēnei. A lawyer for boxer Joseph Parker says his client was never afforded the chance to answer allegations aired at a drug trial. Parker was named during the 2019 trial of a trio found guilty of importing methamphetamine from California. Name suppression for Parker lapsed this afternoon after a 2-year fight all the way to the Supreme Court to keep his name secret. He never faced charges and a warrant to search his house was obtained but not carried out. Michael Heron QC says he accepts the court's decisions but disagrees with them.
This evidence has been given in a trial that he wasn't part of. He's had no opportunity to respond, and really it's of very limited relevance unless he was on trial.
The police say investigators did find evidence Parker knew the accused, but this wasn't enough to start a prosecution. The family of a 90-year-old woman who died after being attacked by 3 teenagers say their mother never felt hatred towards them. The girls, who were aged 14 and 15 at the time, were sentenced to prison and home detention in the High Court at Palmerston North today. During the premeditated home invasion in 2019, Grace Virtue was kicked and punched, causing a brain injury which later killed her. At sentencing today, a victim impact statement from her son Michael was read to the court.
I'm very proud of Mum for the way in which she spoke without hate for the girls, with the exception of her feeling a little silly, stupid and gullible for letting one girl come into the house to use the bathroom. Mum should never felt stupid or gullible. She was being kind and thoughtful for something she believed she was able to give so easily to remedy a problem quickly, and her kindness cost her her life.
Michael Virtue says the family feel empty and numb and see no end to that. Italian syndicate Luna Rossa has gone 2-1 up in the America's Cup, comfortably winning race 3 on the Hauraki Gulf by 37 seconds. Luna Rossa built up a 13-second lead around the first mark and then continued to pull away from the defenders over the next 5 legs. The first team to win 7 races will win the series. Today's second and final race is due to start just before 5:30. Aucklanders are free to gather in large groups again. The shift from alert level 2 to level 1 at midday has been greeted with relief on the streets, yet some people believe the change could have happened or been notified earlier in the week. Cabinet met last night to agree on the change in principle, pending the result this morning of community test results, which all came back negative. Auckland resident Louise Ingalls says the government could have moved faster.
I think given that we've had no community cases, it would have possibly have been the decent thing to do if they could have got the legislation through in time, yeah, especially with the America's Cup and that sort of thing.
Many Auckland bars say they expect problems with staffing and supply this weekend because they did not have enough time to prepare for the change in alert levels. The Union for Primary School Teachers and Principals want schools to stop grouping children by ability. The Educational Institute says the practice, known as streaming, is harming children's achievement. Our education correspondent John Gerritsen reports.
Researchers and the Education Review Office have blamed streaming as a major factor behind New Zealand's long-standing poor performance in international maths tests. They say it makes children think they're no good at the subject. Now the Educational Institute's National Executive and its Māori Council have voted to formally oppose the practice. The union says ability grouping is outdated and schools that still do it need to move to more modern styles of teaching. It says streaming is especially bad for Māori and Pasifika children. Ko John Gerritsen, TNA.
It's 4 minutes past 5. Joseph Parker says his boxing aspirations are unaffected by the revelation he is the high-profile New Zealand sportsman allegedly connected to a global drug syndicate. Parker was named during the Auckland trial of a trio found guilty of importing methamphetamine from California in 2019, but never charged. Clay Wilson reports.
The former boxing heavyweight world champion says in a statement, the process has caused a lot of stress and worry for him and his family and seems totally wrong. Last month, Parker recorded a unanimous points decision win over fellow New Zealander Junior Fa in Auckland. But just days later, he announced he was splitting with longtime coach Kevin Barry and flew out for London to link up with new trainer Irishman Andy.
And we'll come back to that audio in our next bulletin. And as you heard in the news, Italian syndicate Luna Rossa has gone 2-1 up in the America's Cup, beating Team New Zealand by 37 seconds in race 3. Today's second and final race is due to start in 25 minutes. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, the Harvard astronomer who believes we may now have evidence of extraterrestrial technology, Dr. Avi Loeb, said the sceptics have dull, closed minds. Founder of the Aunties, the irrepressible Jackie Clark, on helping women who have lived with domestic abuse. And actor Juliet Stevenson on her role in the adaptation of Jose Saramago's 1995 novel about an epidemic. I'm Kim Hill. Join me 8 o'clock tomorrow morning here on RNZ National.
And the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow, Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, mainly fine. Isolated light showers easing tonight, developing again tomorrow afternoon in Northland. Waikato to Taranaki, including Bay of Plenty, Taumaranui and Taupo, fine weather. Tai Hape, Whanganui, Manawatu and Horowhenua Kapiti Coast, fine. A few areas of cloud tomorrow morning. For Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, also Wellington, cloudy periods, isolated light showers in Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, turning to rain in Gisborne tomorrow evening. Nelson, partly cloudy tonight, isolated afternoon showers inland, becoming fine tomorrow morning. For Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, fine apart from areas of low cloud or fog, mostly morning and night. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, mostly fine, however cloudy periods and isolated light showers developing tomorrow. Chatham Islands, cloudy with occasional drizzle, fine breaks developing tonight. RNZ National, it's coming up to 7 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Susanna. Kia ora, this is Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. Boxer Joseph Parker is denying any involvement in an international meth trafficking ring and says he hasn't had a chance to defend himself against the unfounded allegations. Mr Parker was named in evidence in the 2019 trial of 3 drug dealers who were found guilty and later sentenced to between 8.5 and 18 years behind bars. He fought to keep his identity secret, but can now be named after the Supreme Court ruled the principles of open justice outweigh any hardship he may face. The boxer has never been charged and a warrant to search his house was never executed. His lawyer is Michael Heron QC. If Joseph Parker has nothing to hide, why did he go so many legal rounds to keep his name secret?
Well, as you know, he wasn't on trial. He denied these allegations on oath. Each court found that this would be unduly harsh to publish his name, And really it was a matter of discretion. Ultimately they decided open justice prevailed, but it was pretty obvious all the way through that publication in these rather unfair circumstances was going to be and was going to cause undue hardship, and that's what the court said.
But as you mentioned, the court determined that open justice was the overriding factor here. So to be clear, what is Joseph Parker's relationship with these, in particular, 3 men who are now convicted drug traffickers for dealing meth?
Well, frankly, I've always said, well, that's entirely irrelevant because there's no offence to know or be connected with anyone. And the key thing is, well, is there sufficient evidence to charge someone? The police have investigated, decided there isn't. He's gone further and submitted affidavits denying this on oath. So really, it's irrelevant what connection or otherwise there is.
Michael, it's not exactly, is it exactly fair to say there's insufficient evidence? Perhaps it would be fairer to say that maybe the police haven't taken the investigation as far as they could. They had a search warrant which was issued. The court, as you know, only issues a search warrant where the judge is convinced there's reasonable grounds to suspect an offence and that there's some evidence where they're entitled to search. They had a search warrant, they didn't exercise it. So maybe there's some questions he still needs to answer, isn't there?
Well, the key is you only need to answer those questions if you're charged with an offence. Otherwise, we all go about our business without having to answer that. And your point about a search warrant, there's many reasons why search warrants aren't executed. All of this. Feel free to direct to the police. I understand they've already answered it again today to say there's insufficient evidence to charge him with these allegations, and he denies them on oath.
He made a statement, but an affidavit, a sworn affidavit. But did he cooperate with police? Did he give an interview?
No, he declined to be interviewed through
Why is that, Michael?
Well, it's obvious. 2 reasons. 1, I advised him not to, and 2, he doesn't have to, like anyone doesn't have to. If the police had the evidence, if there was probative evidence to prove these allegations, they would have charged him. Wouldn't matter whether he gave a statement or not.
So there are extensive messages via media apps of alleged buying and selling of illegal drugs, right? And they are between Joseph Parker's account, Joe Boxer Parker, and drug dealers. There's no dispute that it's Joe Parker's account, is there?
Well, none of that. Of course, you remember and you will know, Lisa, that none of this has been able to be tested by Joseph. He's not had formal disclosure and the opportunity to cross-examine the person who attributed these or to put forward his side at all in a trial. And that's just the system. I'm not criticising it, but it's just he wasn't on trial. This evidence has never been put forward against him in a process that he can properly challenge it.
If he feels that it's an unfair situation for him, and as he states, he has nothing to do with these drug dealers and hasn't used meth, here is a perfect opportunity through you to clear up a number of loose ends. As far as I can see from the court decisions, there's no dispute that this is Joe Parker's account. Is that the case?
Well, again, I keep coming back to this. We're not going to relitigate these details. If he were on trial, we could do that. But he has said on oath, as you know, in more than one affidavit, he has not committed offences of this nature. He has not been involved in the matters that were alleged against him. And really, what more can he do?
When Joe Parker's Messenger account messengers one of these men, an alleged drug dealer, the account is Joe Boxer Parker, when he sends a message to the alleged dealer saying he's a good dude with the best stuff, and then later the account Joe Boxer Parker asks, can I get a taster? And the drug dealer replies, lol, got to get a bag, next one I give you a taster, lol. What are they talking about, and what does Joe Boxer Parker mean?
Well, we're going over the same thing. None of that has been proven to be him or what it's about, and all of that was in the possession of the police when they made their decision, and still is. And they've reiterated that because, of course, there's much more to it than simply reading it on its face.
So where does this leave him now?
Oh, well, he, as you saw from the written statement, he's just going to get on with his life. It's taken a toll on him, but he wants to just move on. And this is our system. We've taken it as far as we can. We acknowledge and respect the judgments. That's the system.
Has he been treated fairly?
Well, he's been treated in accordance with the law, and we've had every opportunity to put our arguments in front of the court. So we think the result is unfair, but there's no doubt the courts have applied the law and reached their decisions.
Some people will wonder if your client was treated differently, given a wide berth by police because he was famous, and treated differently to the others who were charged in the end.
Well, you have to ask the police that, but I've seen a very senior, Scott Baird, very senior police officer say again and again that wasn't so. I trust him implicitly.
Well, we did invite the police on the program and they declined, but in a statement, Detective Inspector Scott Baird says, while police did find evidence that this sportsperson knew all of the men who were accused and subsequently convicted, police applied the Solicitor General's prosecution guidelines and found that there was insufficient evidence to commence a prosecution. Police obtained a search warrant to obtain the sportsperson's cell phone. However, at the time the search was to take place, he was not at his address and had travelled overseas. Police made 2 more attempts to visit his address and also went to a family member's address to try and locate him. The sportsperson engaged legal representation and advised police that no statement would be made. The main offenders involved in the importation and distribution of methamphetamine have been held to account for the serious offending they have committed. The status and profile of this individual did not influence the outcome of the investigation. And that is the statement from Detective Inspector Scott Baird. It is 16 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Still to come on the program, Auckland hits level 1 with a hiss and a roar. And speaking of a hiss and a roar, America's Cup action is back on this evening and there are plenty of people out enjoying the action. Our reporter Nick Trubridge is at the America's Cup Village at the Viaduct and joins me now. Hi Nick, you got a few more mates tonight with the racing. Bring us up to speed with the results.
Hi Lisa, I certainly do have a few more mates today. You would recall on Wednesday there was no one behind me, there was no one at the bar over my shoulder. Let's get to the racing. As you say, it's being hotly contested down here. Luna Rossa taking the first race of the day. That makes it 2-1 to the Italians. They call Jimmy Spittle the Bulldog. Lisa, he's certainly coming in hungry. If Team New Zealand lose the second race of the day, they'll be down 3-1, and you would imagine in a real lot of strife going into the next day's racing, of course, tomorrow.
So what's the mood like down there today, Nick, with the level change and all?
The mood, Lisa, it's hard to hear, but I think you're asking about the mood. The mood is obviously a lot more jovial than it was on Wednesday. Hell of a lot more people around. The big screen just behind me, for people that can't see, obviously on the radio, is packed with people. They obviously couldn't make it down here on Wednesday during level 2 because of the limits to 100 people. As I've already mentioned, the mum bar is also full. So, Lisa, all go compared to just 2 days ago, fair to say.
Thanks, Nick, and it's an absolutely stellar day here in Auckland, and we will keep you up to date with that second race. As Nick has pointed out, they're 2-1 to Luna Rossa at the moment, and if they win the next race, 3 up. Interesting. And as you heard from Nick, Auckland's been given the green light and has joined the rest of the country at alert level 1 today. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced the decision late this morning. It was met with delight from businesses around the city, some of whom had to scurry into action. Reporter Louise Tanuth and camera operator Simon Rogers hit the streets as level 1 came into force.
Auckland's Viaduct in full swing just moments after the arrival of Level 1, a drop in levels welcomed by all. Freedom, all freedom.
Yeah. It's great.
Why?
We can go out again.
Yeah, it's really good news. It's good news for New Zealand, for the Cup and everything. Yeah, really cool.
Oh, has it done that?
It's dropped down.
Oh, that's really good because we've just driven up from Palmerston North and I wondered we had to find a mask. So,
yeah, it's good for restaurants too. Like they would have been suffering a bit, eh? So really stoked for them. They can get people through the door and no restrictions. And we're going on a boat, so no restrictions on there as well.
Sun's shining, enough wind for a bit of racing. Should be a good day.
Well, we're here for the weekend, so there's no change for us. Obviously, just opens up a bit more freedom around the city, though.
Auckland's hospitality industry was left on tenterhooks last night on the eve of 3 big days of America's Cup racing. Megan Beasler is the manager of Danny Doolan's. She says the drop in levels was perfect timing. They had to move quick.
So I had it on the tellies while I was setting up. So then when she said, oh, it's midday, because we open at midday. So when she said, okay, it's going to be at 12 o'clock, I was like, oh God, I need to set up pretty quick because we're going to get more people in. But it was good because it takes off a lot of stress.
Level 2 restrictions were difficult for the bar, so she's hoping the next 3 days of racing will give them a boost.
And we were only allowed 100 people in at once, so we're actually quite a small bar anyway, so it was quite tough to squeeze everyone in.
At Soul Bar and Bistro, tensions were high, especially for commercial and events manager Olivia Carter.
Well, we were actually watching it on my phone at the front desk because we were mid-service, and Steve and I just screamed out, yay, level 1, and all of the customers just looked at us. There was a big loud cheer and everyone was so excited.
They're now able to fit around triple the number of people at the restaurant, and it's all hands on deck.
We'd already had a little bit of a plan to have some people on call essentially, but that was the first thing we did, call them, get some more staff in and get some staff in earlier to help as well.
And for Holy Moly Golf Club, they're finally back to offering more players a game.
Woohoo! Yeah, baby! Heck yeah, we're excited. So now for Holy Moly specifically, you can drink while playing, which is awesome. That is great news for us. But yeah, it definitely means we can get more people golfing as well, which is great. It was a very short notice that we were given this morning just before opening, but we definitely made it work. We have gone and picked up some extra food just from a sister venue today, just to accommodate, obviously, for more people that are probably going to be coming through. But yeah, we've got it all together.
For the arts, it's not that simple, with weeks needed to prep for events, not several hours. Pride Month was originally scheduled to finish this month, but it's now been pushed through to April. Festival director Max Tweedy welcomes Level 1 for their events this weekend, though he says with no hindsight, it's frustrating.
Slight disappointment because obviously this gives us a very short period of time to kind of roll out those changes, especially for events tonight. And, I guess we would have just liked a little bit more time to know about the decision changing at midday today.
He says the government should have given a heads up.
The minimum for us that we would have loved to see was just hey, if we do move to Level 1, which was obviously likely, that it will take effect at that midday point, because essentially for now, for our Pride event tonight in about 6 hours time, we've had an 8-hour window to suddenly roll that event up. And I think what people don't really necessarily appreciate is, first of all, that event is for level 2 restrictions, right? So you've got way less people inside that event.
But with the sun out in the city of sails, the return to Level 1 is a very welcome sight. Moti hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Louise Tenuth, aho.
The Prime Minister says Cabinet wanted to be sure there were no new community cases overnight before making the announcement today. And while Aucklanders were waiting to hear that decision, this was happening on Twitter. Well-known Wellington restaurant man Martin Bosley tweeted, "Feeling really sorry for all Auckland hospo having to wait until 11:30 a.m. today to find out about moving levels. It's utterly ludicrous. Stay strong, my friends. Keep the faith." In response to that, the Prime Minister's fiancé, Clark Gayford, tweeted back, "Martin, an in-principle decision was decided, but it's all pending on final results today."
What he will be reflecting is in the media accusations that are being made that we've made a decision. As I've just said, it was an in-principle decision. That is not correct that he is forewarned of what the decision is.
Prime Minister, the tweet is quite detailed. It says you've made an in-principle decision and you are waiting on pending data that you'll be getting this morning. So when was he briefed on Cabinet's
he has not.
decision?
He has not. And look, what I've just said is exactly the same as what you've repeated in that text.
Prime Minister, just a point of clarification. Are you categorically saying that Clark Gayford had no access to privileged information?
Of course. I have not seen my partner since yesterday. He absolutely has not. And I really reject the implication. I think what he has taken off his own bat to rebut is the suggestion that we've had a decision that we've sat on. That is information we were sharing since yesterday, the process we were following.
Out of kindness, just one more question, Prime Minister. And that was Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. We're keen for your feedback. If you're in Auckland, what does a move to Alert Level 1 mean for you? You can text us on 2101, you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Orchardists say they're facing the biggest labour crisis they've ever seen due to border closures and COVID-19. They've been crying out for more workers for months. And that is despite offering a minimum of $20 an hour and much more, depending on how many bins of apples you can pick. So why has there been such a low turnout? And is apple picking really as hard as people say it is? We sent our Hawke's Bay reporter Tom Kitchen and his camera to find out.
Kia ora, I'm Tom, the reporter for Radio New Zealand in Hawke's Bay. Today I am not working in the office. I am not sitting at my desk calling people, emailing people, asking them for comment. I am out in the misty fields of Hastings this morning, picking some apples. This is quite a different thing for me, but I thought I'd give it a go because they're so short of workers. Why don't I give it a shot and see what it's like? So I'll be busy today. How am I feeling about it? I'm actually feeling quite excited because I'm trying something new, but I'm sure I won't be feeling like that in a few hours. Let's see how it goes. Let's get started. First things first, where to start? Miles Hales is the operations manager at Johnny Appleseed. All right, so I'm about to start apple picking. What do I need to know?
Well, you need to know how to pick fruit. So this is the first day for you, Tom. So we'll show you and induct you how to pick fruit and pick the right fruit, how to handle it correctly. And we're going to introduce you to your new best friend. It's called a ladder. Okay, so they're very light. This ladder is a little bit too big for these trees, so it's probably 16 kg, if that. So what ladder placement is crucial. If you want to make some money, you have to place the ladder correctly in the tree.
Miles explains you don't want to pick the same tree twice or have a tough time reaching for the best apple and fall off the ladder. Neither do you want to be balancing your ladder on rotting apples along the ground. Next, I talk to orchard manager Leon Swart, who gives me my other new best friend, a picking bucket. It'll be glued to my chest all day long.
Because you're going to use your picking bucket all the time, you need to have that as comfortable as possible. If it's too loose, it'll swing you around. So you want it just nice and comfortable, so your elbow is just above it. If it's too low, it will swing around. If it's too high, you have to lift up your arm, so that makes you tired.
So I get started, up and down the ladder, from the bottom of the tree to the top. What I found almost immediately is it's more of a mental than physical game, and that surprised me. There are so many apples you have to leave on the trees because they don't have the right colour just yet. I'm picking ambrosia apples, so I'm looking for a nice, bold, beautiful deep red, nothing too yellow or green. And you don't just pick the apple straight off the tree. No, you cup it in your palm, then place it gently in the bucket. As I'm working, I get the chance to go and chat to some of my new colleagues. I speak to Dean, who, like me, is pretty new to the game.
I moved down here about 2 weeks ago and I was trying to get the dole and it was a bit difficult, so I thought, well, heck, and I seen this advertised on the road sign, and so I went to the reception of the office the next day, and here I am.
What made you want to move here?
My parents live here and they're getting on in age, so decided I wanted to be a bit closer for them.
Yeah. All right. And you've been, this is the second week. How have you been finding it so far?
Oh, I'm loving it, eh? I think what makes this job is the people we work with.
Have you found it challenging?
Yeah, no, not challenging at all. Just getting up that little bit early, I suppose, is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I reckon, eh? Yeah, me too. Not too far away is Gregor. He's been picking apples for 20 years. So I ask him, how much have things changed?
It's sort of changed now with the labour shortage. Like, I find we are getting more money in our pocket, which is good.
Why is that?
Well, just because the amount of money they pay has gone up, trying to attract people, I suppose.
Okay, cool. And what have been the challenges of picking apples for 20 years?
I don't know. Yeah, people sort of. It's not really regarded as a cool job, so people sort of look down on you, I suppose, eh?
Now that's a call for my half-hour lunch break. I'm finding my shoulders are starting to ache when I'm carrying the heaviest loads, but a quick instant coffee and a sandwich sets me right, and I'm back to it. It's time for me to empty my picking bucket laden with 12 kilos of apples. Right, so you can see my full bucket of apples here on my chest. So I'm just going to walk down to the bin here and I'm going to put it in my bin, which, look, it's not quite full yet. It's only my first bit of the day and it's after lunchtime. So, look, I'm going a bit slow, but hey, it's all part of the learning process, I guess you could say. So what I'm going to do is, you'll see here, I've got a couple of ropes and I'm just going to untie them, put them down like that. I can get rid of this heavy load that I am carrying, so just get rid of that one too. This one's a bit harder to get rid of, it seems, but there we go, did it. Alright, now I'm just going to let it go. Now you've got to do it very, very gently, because even the slightest hard noise could bruise these apples, so I'm just doing it very, very gently. You don't want it to sound like gunfire. That's what I've been taught. Alright, there we go. All done and dusted. Now back to it. It's 3:30 p.m, and while it's the end of my day, others here like Gregor and Dean will work through till about 5:30. Other people around me have filled 3 or more bins. Each bin holds 410 kilograms of apples. I'm told RSC workers can pick over 10 bins a day. That's a whopping 4,000 kilos of apples. I've only done one, and a bit, around 500 kilos. But my supervisor, Ilakimi Mao, isn't concerned. He tells me my bin looks perfect. That's so nice, because I feel like I'm going really slowly.
It's because it's your first time. It's not as easy as it sounds. Like you go through like those mental thing. Like, am I picking the right color? Am I leaving too much? Am I taking less? With those things, it'll slow you down, which is understandable.
Oh, thanks. So should I quit my day job and come and work for you?
Oh yes. I reckon you'll make more money in this season than your job. Yeah.
As my day comes to an end, I'm sunburnt, a bit bruised, dirty and tired, but not aching as much as I thought I'd be. And I've had fun. If I'd been a paid worker, I would have earned $20 an hour today because I picked less than 2 bins of apples. Someone who picks 2 bins is paid $23 an hour, and 3 bins $26 for 4, and so on. On an orchard in Hastings for Checkpoint, called Tom Kitchen Tēnei.
And if you were listening to Tom's piece on radio, do go have a look at it online. It is absolutely superb. He says a little bit sunburned, but he was looking a bit like a rosy apple by the end of that. And coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, COVID's been tough, but spare an extra thought for victims of family violence. There's been more of it in the past year. The super city gets more than $30 billion to soup up walking and cycling initiatives. Ferries and buses get a boost too. And the kids going bush as more schools get the thumbs up to ditch traditional classrooms. We would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. Text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Time for the headlines now with Susanna.
The lawyer for Joseph Parker has told Checkpoint he advised the boxer not to give a statement to the police. Michael Heron QC says the boxer has sworn an affidavit that he has not committed drug offences. The 29-year-old was named during the 2019 trial of a trio found guilty of importing methamphetamine and had since fought to keep his name suppressed. Parker says he accepts today's Supreme Court decision to reveal his name and now wants to put the matter behind him. The family of a 90-year-old woman who died after being attacked by 3 girls say they feel empty and numb and see no end to that. During the home invasion in 2019, Grace Virtue was kicked and punched, causing a brain injury which later killed her. The teenagers were sentenced to prison and home detention in the High Court at Palmerston North today. Aucklanders can now get together in big groups again after the city joined the rest of the country at COVID Alert Level 1 at midday today. Cabinet met last night to agree on the change in principle, pending the result of community test results this morning, which all came back negative. There are no new cases of COVID-19 in the community today and one positive case in managed isolation. The Ministry of Health is expecting results shortly from the 5 remaining close contacts connected to the February outbreak, who have all been in quarantine for 12 days. All other tests connected to the February outbreak have returned negative results. The second America's Cup race of the day has just got underway on the Hauraki Gulf. Italian syndicate Luna Rossa comfortably won the first race by 37 seconds to take a 2-1 lead against Team New Zealand. The first team to win 7 races will win the series. The death of a man in the South Auckland suburb of Flatbush last weekend is not being treated as suspicious. Kunal Kera, who was 26, was found in his burned-out vehicle on Saturday night. His death will be referred to the coroner. Those are the latest news headlines from RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. Just trying to get a quick update on the race that started. I hear Team New Zealand is in front. I'm getting a thumbs up from the control room. Team New Zealand is in front. We will keep you posted. It is time now to go to the business news with Nicholas Poynton. Nicholas, IMF rates the country's economic recovery from the lockdowns. What say they?
Yeah, the International Monetary Fund has really given the New Zealand economy a pat on the back for how we've responded from the lockdowns last year. It said the health response has been swift to really contain the spread of the pandemic, and that the economic support was significant through both fiscal stimulus and also those measures taken by the RBNZ through rates cuts, funding for lending programs, as well as these large-scale asset purchase programs. But it did single out the wage subsidy scheme. It says it covered about 60% of the workforce in this country, and compared to other schemes, it was the most significant of its kind around the world. And from here on in, though, it does say that the economic growth would be moderate, wage growth would be slow, and it expects inflation will hit 2%, which is the midpoint of the RBNZ's target range by 2023. But praise aside for the government and the economy for how everything's been going, the IMF did highlight a number of issues that would need government attention. First of all, there's the job losses. They have hurt low-skilled workers, young people, women, people from Māori and Pacifica backgrounds the most. The IMF says there is a need for specific supports to help these people throughout the pandemic. Otherwise, current inequalities will be exacerbated. And then the other concern, perhaps chief among them, is the surging property market. It warns, if left unchecked, it could trigger a pronounced correction in the market. It's called for a suite of specific measures. First, on the supply side, there is the need to free up land, to completely revamp how land is zoned and planning, and also just to make the whole process of fast-tracking consents for large-scale housing projects, to make that streamlined, make it quicker. On the other, though, on the demand side, they say that there's a need for a stamp tax or a capital gains tax. They say that would reduce demand in the property market, take some of the heat out, while more of those houses came to market that are being built for people to buy. But under this current government, as we know, they've ruled out a capital gains tax. And the IMF says without them, house prices will continue to surge.
Man, you get a sense of deja vu just listening through those things, Nicholas. It's not like we haven't heard them before.
Exactly.
Okay, the 2 big Kiwi tech companies snapped up from overseas buyers.
Yeah, a pair of big announcements came through today. The first is the Christchurch-based software developer Sequent. It's being sold to a US firm, Bentley Systems, for just under $1.5 billion. Now, Sequent, it develops software to analyse beneath the ground, or things below the Earth's surface, for infrastructure projects, so things like piping or big tunnels. It's a multinational firm with about 400 staff around the world. It makes about $100 million every year, but not most of that revenue is actually made overseas. And meanwhile, you've also got the local software company Vend. It's been sold to a Canadian company called Lightspeed for about $500 million. The company, which is owned by a handful of private investors as well as the Movac venture capital firm, they develop software that allows retailers to use iPads instead of cash registers. And that firm has been held in very high regard. But both of these 2 sales today, just another example in the long line of New Zealand businesses that start off small here, get to a reasonable size, they don't go public, they don't list, and they're snapped up by some big overseas firm.
Okay, well, what numbers have you got
Yeah,
on
the
your notepad
NZX
there,
had
Nicholas?
a bit of a recovery today. It's up 154 points to close at 12,427. The dollar is at 72.2 US cents and 92.7 Australian.
Thanks, Nicholas. Nicholas Poynton there with our business news this Friday. Now, a quick update on the America's Cup racing, and Team New Zealand is ahead at the halfway mark in the second race. Just to repeat that, Team New Zealand ahead at the halfway mark in the second race, and Luna Rossa won the first race, taking a 2-1 lead in the Cup. Nail-biting stuff. Right. Domestic violence has not only increased over the last year, but victim advocates say the brutality of attacks and severity has also skyrocketed. Last year, Checkpoint was told by experts that it'd be one of the worst years yet for domestic violence, exacerbated by COVID-19. Louise Tanuth reports.
2020 was a busy year for national domestic violence service provider Shine. Referrals increased and the levels of violence they saw was among the worst they've seen. Team manager Deb Summaries says they're in desperate need of support to keep up with demand.
We are, as a sector, in need of additional resourcing and funding to help keep our staff buoyant and so that we can provide the services that are required with the people that need it.
What they're seeing is backed up by police statistics. Data for 2020 shows there's been a 25% increase in reports of domestic violence since 2018. Last year, incidents rose by around 13,000 compared to 2019. While police statistics are helpful to understand the issue, Deb Murray says they're only a fraction of the picture.
Probably about 30% of the referrals that come into Shine are from police. What we do see outside of that, self-referrals in, people emailing, people calling, come through our national helpline, such high capacity and also requiring a specialist needs response.
Inspector Elise Robertson is the family harm manager at County's Manukau district. She echoes this concern, saying it's too early to tell what long-term impact COVID will have.
People losing their job, becoming, financially dependent on others, or those kinds of pressures can lead to other pressures in families that could lead to alcohol consumption. Those kinds of threads and trends that can come about with such a thing as COVID will definitely probably have an impact, but the full extent, I think, still yet to come.
She admits family violence incidents reported to police rising each year is concerning, but puts it down to more victims having the confidence to speak.
I mean, whilst we wish it wasn't happening, I think that the willingness of people to come forward provides that opportunity for the right agencies to engage to reduce that harm. We would far rather know about it than it being behind closed doors.
Dr. Katerina Standish of Otago's National Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies has been studying the effect COVID has on domestic violence incidents. She analysed Google searches for the months of March to August in 2019 and 2020, looking for signs of psychological stress. They included terms like how to hit a woman so no one knows and he will kill me. In all categories, there was a huge increase from 31% in 2019 to 106% in 2020. While the searches were US-based, she says it's the same story here.
New Zealand has the worst family and intimate violence rate in the world. And COVID-19 has doubled that. Evidence has shown that increases in violences have been happening since 2020, since the COVID lockdowns in New Zealand. But not just that increases of violences are happening, but severity of violences.
She says lockdowns and social distancing may be key to stopping the spread of COVID-19, but they're having another deadly effect, and women are suffering the most.
Both genders are experiencing the pandemic, but women are bearing the brunt of it. UN Women has come out with a report that forecasts that the COVID-19 will push 45 million women and girls into extreme poverty by the end of this year.
Moti hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Louise Tanuth aho.
And just a reminder of where to get help. You can call Women's Refuge on 0800 733 843. And I'll give you that number again. It's 0800 733 843. Or you can call New Zealand Police. Now, we will put the full list of numbers up on our website. China's Olympic Committee has offered vaccine doses for all athletes at this year's Tokyo Games and next year's Beijing Winter Olympics. The IOC says it's grateful for the offer, which it says is in the true Olympic spirit of solidarity. The BBC's Alex Capstick reports.
Towards another gold medal, another European title. Inga Johnson wins it. Lewandowski the silver.
Olympic hopefuls getting some much-needed competition time at the recent European Indoor Athletics Championships. There were no fans in Poland, but it didn't prevent COVID from striking at the event. The host nation pulled out of a men's relay following a positive test. It's a scenario the organisers in Tokyo are desperate to avoid, but whatever safety protocols are in place, it's believed vaccines are key to holding a successful Games.
The IOC will undertake a great effort so that as many as possible of the Olympic participants and visitors will arrive here vaccinated.
The problem for Thomas Bach, the president of the International Olympic Committee, is that he can't force governments to prioritise athletes in their vaccination programmes. Many of them will be reluctant to jump the queue anyway. Evan Dunphy is a racewalker from Canada.
First off, 100% behind getting vaccinated when it's my turn in line. I'm vehemently against any sort of priority access for athletes who are otherwise, young, healthy adults, just so that we could go off and gallivant and play games in Tokyo. I don't think that's fair to our communities.
Here, a vaccination centre in Tel Aviv where the rollout is moving apace. Most elite Israeli sportsmen and women have had their jabs. Gal Dubnov-Raz is the chief medic for the country's Olympic team.
Top-level athletes are a national priority. I mean, they represent the country. I think it does give you a better peace of mind, and you can put the COVID thing aside and focus on your actual training.
It's a view shared by the IOC's longest-serving member, Dick Pound. He caused a stir last month when he promoted the case for pushing athletes forward once key workers and the most vulnerable have been immunised. It's happening in countries like Hungary, Lithuania and Mexico, but it's not widespread.
We wait until it's our turn, but as soon as the situation regarding the supply with vaccine will relax, we would very much like the idea to give the team the opportunity.
The IOC, which has not made vaccinations compulsory, is hoping for the best. But with most countries sticking rigidly to their immunisation protocols, the prospect of thousands of athletes turning up in Tokyo without a jab does seem likely.
Alex Capstick with that report. It is almost 6:15. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. After 6 tonight, wheels and feet and the extra $31 billion to get Auckland moving. The Australian government's new scheme offering half-price flights has reignited border wars and intercity rivalries across Australia. The cheap airfares are only for 15 select locations and some are angry their town or city will miss out. And airlines are warning the scheme will only work if states and territories don't keep ordering snap border closures at the first sign of a coronavirus outbreak. The ABC's Alexia Atwood has more.
Dubbo is the major centre for Western New South Wales, with a big agricultural industry and tourism attractions such as the Western Plains Zoo. Today, though, its mayor, Ben Shields, is cranky. He says the federal government's newly announced plan to subsidise flights to 15 locations across Australia will steal tourists from Western New South Wales and send them straight to Queensland.
There's still time to go back to the drawing board, get your crayons out and work out a better plan for tourism and the aviation industry for Australia.
4 Queensland cities will benefit from the plan versus one town on the south coast of New South Wales. And it's not just tourism the Dubbo mayor is worried about.
What is so annoying in this is that this isn't just about tourism. For example, the vast bulk of people who use our airport are medical professionals flying into Dubbo and then using this airport as a base for all of Western New South Wales. Now, without those flights coming in, it's getting a lot harder for doctors. The idea that we'll just continue to leave the Dubbo Regional Airport sitting out there losing money without many flights here while we're throwing money at these Queensland destinations is so unfair to Western New South Wales.
COVID restrictions raise tensions between New South Wales and Queensland, and the border wars are on again. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian has told 9 Radio the scheme favours some states over others and that Queensland's tourism woes are the product of its own hardline border closures.
The tourism problems in Queensland is completely self-inflicted and that didn't have to be the case. So it is frustrating.
Avalon is the only Victorian airport included, but there's bipartisan calls for Melbourne Airport to be added too, with the city still reeling from its extended lockdown. Here's Shadow Victorian Tourism Minister Cindy McLeish.
Looks as though it's very clearly targeted to leisure destinations and not major cities. Melbourne is the major city that has suffered the most. Hotel quarantine, contact tracing has been bungled, and we have suffered.
Understandably, though, the airlines are thrilled with the scheme. Virgin boss Jane Herdlicker says as soon as the plan was announced, there was a spike in ticket sales.
We can see the activity lifting already yesterday, immediately following the announcement. Our bookings were up 40% yesterday, and the half-price fares aren't yet out there. Traffic to the website was twice what it had been before.
Both Ms Hardlicker and Qantas Chief Executive Alan Joyce warn that in order for the program to even work, state borders need to stay open.
The other big thing that can happen to really support tourism is for the premiers to actually give confidence that the borders won't close and open like they have been over the last 6 months.
The Federal Tourism Minister Dan Tehan says the locations were carefully selected.
Once we see that demand back in full, we're going to look at other destinations. So this is all about working together.
But with JobKeeper ending in about 3 weeks, there are fears extra help could come too late.
And that report by Alexia Atwood in Australia. Let's head back to the America's Cup, where Team New Zealand is firmly in the lead in the second race. Our reporter Nick Trubridge joins us now from North Wharf.
Hi Lisa, well it's pumping down here at North Wharf, as you can see behind me. A lot of these bars were nowhere near as busy as this on Wednesday, obviously, when we were still in level 2. And I've got with me the director of one of those bars. This is Tricky Hartley. He's the company director of Conservatory Bar just behind us. Tricky, I imagine, a fairly momentous day for you guys at last back at level 1. You must be pumped about it.
Yeah, finally we're where we need to be and where we've really wanted to be for the last week or so, to be fair. It's been challenging today to get ready for level 1 in such short notice.
Let's talk about that short notice. Obviously, we've heard the government say that they did have a decision in principle last night, but they decided to wait till 11:30 today to make that announcement. How does that affect you guys? Is that frustrating?
It's incredibly frustrating. It affects us enormously. We have to get our staff ready. For example, in level 2, we're in a very different layout situation. We have to have our social distancing, which means different furniture layout. Level 1, we've always planned to have more furniture, which we've had to pay for, which means we'd have been able to fit another 50 to 100 people in today.
So, pretty gutting.
Oh, yeah, soul destroying, to be honest. I mean, yes, I appreciate we're in level 1, and that's all great news. But with them knowing last night, we really should have been informed last night.
And you were saying, obviously it's Team New Zealand well in the lead in this race. In fact, it sounds like they might have just run, judging by the noise behind us. As long as this regatta goes on, that's good for you guys, I imagine.
It's amazing for us, It's like winning the bar lottery down here. Obviously, that got taken away from us initially with COVID. It's amazing that we're open, and we just need the public now to come down and support the local businesses down here.
All right, Tricky, hey, thanks very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the regatta. Lisa, obviously 2-2, as I was just saying, judging by the noise behind us. That means racing will continue all the way through the weekend. There's 2 more races tomorrow, and then 2 more races on Sunday as well. Anyone who thought this regatta was going to be runaway in Team New Zealand's favour is surely mistaken, because as you can see, it is very, very close.
Nick, your detective work is fantastic. You are right. It is even Stevens now, with Team New Zealand just winning that race. That was Nick Trubridge joining us from North Wharf there, where there are a lot more people down there at alert level 1. Picture a typical school day, reading, writing, maths, maybe some time outside if the weather is good, while more and more children are scrapping that, leaving the classroom and going bush. Under the Education Act, school boards can approve a 1-day-a-week exemption for pupils to head off and do a different type of learning. And since the nationwide lockdown, demand for 1-day-a-week nature or forest school programs has skyrocketed. Our reporter Emma Hatton and cameraman Samuel Rillstone got their own exemption for the day and left the office to file this report.
It's a grey, drizzly morning at Battle Hill Farm in Powatahanui, north of Wellington. There's a strong northwesterly, but that doesn't faze the kids gathering at the big red shearing shed. Jake, armed with a green fishing net, is particularly keen to head down to the Eel Creek today.
I really enjoy the campfires too, and
lots of other stuff. I find nature school really fun.
What's the biggest eel that you've caught? How big?
I've never caught any before, but I have seen a really big one in the eel pond before.
You've got a special name for it, don't you?
Yeah, we call it Big Chungus.
Leo Smith and Dan Green run the program and say it's about giving children and their families the option to do something different.
We have the families that are really into the outdoors and they know that their children need something, need a balance in life and need this aspect of what we offer. And then we have quite a few, we're getting more and more inquiries from families who have children with diagnosed things like ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorder, and they don't always, the school system doesn't always work that well for them.
Jake, the eel enthusiast's mum Claire, says making the decision to come here has been nothing but beneficial.
We've had a lot of problems with Jake participating in school for the last few years, so he doesn't do any work at school. It's a lot of school refusal, not wanting to join in. He started nature school this term, huge turnaround.
Likewise, Mark's son Alfie comes along to escape the busy schoolyard.
So Alfie goes to an inner city school in Wellington and it's a lot of concrete, and here he's obviously surrounded by beauty and bush and just learning a little bit about the environment and how to appreciate it and respect it, enjoy it and also survive in it.
And it appears more and more parents feel the same way. Celia Hogan, who runs nature programs and helps others run theirs, says in 5 years New Zealand's gone from one-day school to more than 30.
Partly that comes from, we've got a lot more early childhood centres running nature excursion programs, and then when they're getting to school, they've already recognised what the benefits of those programs are, and then they're missing out when they get to school. So parents are asking for this, and if schools aren't able to provide it, one-day school is the next best option.
She says the message is clear. Children want more time outside. Kathy Broadhead runs one-day programs like this across the Bay of Plenty and confirms the demand is definitely there.
I'm getting a lot more inquiries and I've got a waiting list now, and I'd just love to see it in schools, so that every child in New Zealand was having these opportunities.
She also runs training programs for teachers to help them bring more nature-based learning into a typical classroom day. One school that doesn't need that sort of help, though, is Waikino Primary School in Waihi. Its principal, Joanna Wiwe, says everyone there does at least 1 day a week in the bush.
2017 when I got here, and then I found out that we actually owned a whole forest at the back of the school too. And I was like, right, I know what we're doing with that.
Waikino School also opens for 1 day a week so pupils from other schools can come join in. Ms Wiwe says it's not something authorities, including the Educational Review Office, understand particularly well yet, but she's certain it's the direction education should be heading.
Sometimes it's just being brave enough to do it, really, and that's a scary thing for principals and teams often, to just go, well, actually, I'm going to throw this out, and we're going to go with our gut.
All agree funding the programs is one of the biggest barriers, with most operating on a user pays basis, costing anywhere between $50 and $100 a day. A Ministry of Education spokesperson, Katrina Casey, did not respond to RNZ's questions related to funding for such programs, but said such opportunities were best understood by the school, the child's family, and that learning can happen anywhere. And in today's case at Battle Hill, that's down at the waterhole, looking for Big Chungus. For Checkpoint, Emma Hatton.
And if you were listening to Emma and Samuel's piece there, do go to our Facebook page and check out the video. Some fantastic shots of nature and that massive eel. 1 year ago, the world-famous Broadway theatres went silent due to the pandemic. Industry professionals say it has faced its biggest crisis in history, and nearly 100,000 livelihoods have been threatened. Close to 15 million people visited Broadway shows in 2019, yet it was one of the first entertainment districts to close. CNN's Richard Quest has this report.
When they closed the theatres in March of last year, no one really expected they would be shut for so long. But now, as the anniversary passes and with no date in sight for reopening, Broadway and all the theatres around 42nd Street, it's as if time has stood still.
maybe by Easter, maybe by May, maybe by June. Broadway thinks June. Broadway is a very important part of our economy. I get it. It's a lot of jobs. It's a big economic engine. But how can you say that?
We're going to work with Broadway. We're going to see if there's a way, but health and safety first.
The phantom of COVID has hit Broadway, maybe the hardest of all the live venues in America. Broadway is the beating heart of New York City's cultural life and one of the largest driving forces of our whole economy.
Coronavirus hit New York early and hit it hard. It halted the spectacular long run of hit shows like Wicked.
The Moulin Rouge.
And scuppered new productions such as Moulin Rouge, which recently made its debut, hoping to form its way into the great American songbook. All told, an estimated 97,000 jobs were suddenly gone. Philip Birch, the CEO of Playbill, says it's created a lost generation of talent on Broadway. The theatres closed. They closed suddenly for understandable reasons. But what happened to all of this?
This came to a screeching halt. There is no one working in these theaters except the maintenance people, keep maintaining them and keeping them ready to reopen. But Broadway is in complete ice.
And how are they surviving?
Some are not. I think that there's probably a whole swath of people who are now leaving New York. They're back in their parents' basements and patiently waiting for Broadway to reopen.
The pandemic tamped out a Broadway that was booming. Ticket sales had never been higher. Now these theatres are figuring out how to reopen safely.
Broadway is an intimate environment. People work next to each other very closely. They sit next to each other. It's a very, very intimate exchange of collaboration and creativity.
Now, assuming you get that side of the equation right, economically, can you open these theatres and can you have productions with 30% capacity?
It's not possible. Broadway is a very low margin business on many levels. It is very expensive, very labor intensive, very talented people who have to be paid well. Broadway will open at 100% or it probably will not be able to open at all.
The sun will come out tomorrow. Annie sings The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow.
And that report was from Richard Quest. Some feedback on our reporter Tom Kitchen, who went apple picking. He's a legend, this person says. Apple of our eye.
RNZ News at 6 ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leatawa tēnei. The lawyer for boxer Joseph Parker says while the courts have applied the law, the results seem unfair. Parker denies any involvement in an international methamphetamine trafficking ring, which saw 3 drug dealers jailed. He says he hasn't had a chance to defend himself against the unfounded allegations and was never charged. The boxer fought through the courts to keep his identity secret, but has lost that fight with the Supreme Court ruling that open justice outweighs any hardship he may face. Michael Heron QC told Checkpoint Parker has been treated in accordance with the law.
We've had every opportunity to put our arguments in front of the court. So we think the result is unfair, but there's no doubt the courts have applied the law and reached their decisions.
Michael Heron says Parker now just wants to move on. The son of a 90-year-old woman who died after being attacked by 3 teenagers says he looked to see if they were upset by their actions but saw nothing. The 3 girls, now aged 15 and 16, were sentenced to prison and home detention for the manslaughter of live-in woman Grace Virtue. In a victim impact statement read to the High Court in Palmerston North, Mrs Virtue's son Gavin says the defendants didn't look remorseful during the trial.
During the court case, I glanced at the 3 of you many times. I was wondering if I would see a tear or similar emotion. Nothing. If anything, mild boredness or contempt. It appears to me that the consequences of killing my mother are just an inconvenience to you. The impact of your actions is ongoing. In future years, you may or may not regret your actions.
Gavin Virtue says it will impact their lives forever. Team New Zealand has won race 4 of the America's Cup to level the best of 13 series at 2 races all. The defenders crossed the line a minute and 3 seconds ahead of challengers Luna Rossa in the second and final race of the day, after the Italians won the opening race by 37 seconds. It's the biggest winning margin of the 4 races so far. The manager of an Auckland bar expects to have problems with staffing and supplies this weekend because he didn't have time to prepare for a change in alert levels. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced at half past 11 this morning that the city would drop to level 1 from midday. The manager of the Occidental bar, Patrick O'Leary, says it's been quite frustrating knowing Cabinet made that decision in principle last night without announcing it. He says he had to ask the band at his bar to change their set so people wouldn't dance, but is now going to ask them to change it again. A Hawke's Bay orchard has seen more than 600 workers come and go this season. The operations manager at Johnny Appleseed, Miles Hales, has told Checkpoint the worker shortage is the worst he's seen in 21 years in the job.
Turnover is huge. We must be approaching over 600 staff that have started and are no longer here.
Mr Hales says managers and permanent staff have worked a huge number of extra hours. He says they employed many students, but they aren't as efficient as RSE workers or permanent New Zealand staff. President Joe Biden says every American adult will be eligible for a vaccine by May, with the goal of getting the nation closer to normal by July. This afternoon he gave his first primetime address to the nation, as Kate Fisher reports.
He tried to remind them what he has done, what his administration is doing to turn things around, and then give them hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel and normality could resume relatively soon.
If we do this together, by July the 4th, there's a good chance you, your families and friends will be able to get together in your backyard or in your neighborhood and have a cookout or a barbecue and celebrate Independence Day.
But the idea for that is that this will only happen if all Americans play their part, he says, and that means continuing to wear a mask, continuing to social distance, and importantly, to take that vaccine.
Kate Fisher in Washington. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has confirmed a request for assistance from the Kiribati island of Banaba, which is suffering a water crisis. An official says New Zealand and Australia will charter a ship to take fresh drinking water to the island, as well as technicians to repair a desalination plant. The PAC news agency also reports the Kiribati President's Office has pledged to send a vessel with much-needed freshwater supplies, as well as a new desalination plant. On Wednesday, community leader Rubina Ritata sent a distress call for international help due to the desperate situation for the island's 300 residents who were dying for clean water. It's 5 minutes past 6. Joseph Parker says his boxing aspirations are unaffected by the revelation he is the high-profile New Zealand sportsman allegedly connected to a global drug syndicate. Parker was named during the Auckland trial of a trio found guilty of importing methamphetamine from California in 2019. Although he was the subject of police interest, he was never charged. Parker travelled to London earlier this week ahead of a potential bout with British veteran Derek Chisora, and his lawyer Michael Heron QC says Parker is focused on that fight.
Well, in my communications with him last night, he's getting on with the new trainer, the new regime. It's pretty full on, and he's jet lagged, of course, but he's getting on with it.
Joseph Parker's lawyer Michael Heron QC. And as you heard in the news, the America's Cup is locked up at 2 races apiece after Team New Zealand recovered to win today's second race. Challengers Luna Rossa won the opening race by 37 seconds to go 2-1 up in the best of 13 series, but the defenders comprehensively won race 4 by over a minute after the Italians appeared to suffer a mechanical issue with one of their foiling arms. There are 2 more races tomorrow, with the first 2-7 wins taking the trophy. AC Milan scored a stoppage time equaliser to draw 1-1 with Manchester United in their Europa League last 16. First leg at Old Trafford leaves the clash of football's heavyweights in the balance ahead of the second leg in the San Siro next week. Tottenham closed in on a place in the quarter-finals with a 2-0 win over Dinamo Zagreb, with Arsenal had a 3-1 win at the Greek side against the Greek side Olympiacos. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Anna Scotney, star of the new Kiwi flick Cousins selects the mixtape Country Life meets Fencer Fred. Yes, I guess you can probably work out what he does for a living. And because the one crossing Sydney Harbour was opened on this day in 1932, we've got a Sonic Tonic dedicated to bridges. So why don't you build one and get over it? With me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, mainly fine. Isolated light showers easing tonight, developing again tomorrow afternoon in Northland. Waikato to Taranaki, including Bay of Plenty, Taumaranui and Taupo, fine weather. Taihape, Wanganui, Manawatu and Horowhenua Kapiti Coast, fine. A few areas of cloud tomorrow morning. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, also Wellington, cloudy periods. Isolated light showers in Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, turning to rain in Gisborne tomorrow night. Nelson, partly cloudy tonight. Isolated showers inland, becoming fine tomorrow morning. Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, fine apart from areas of low cloud or fog, mostly morning and night. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, mostly fine. However, cloudy periods and isolated light showers developing tomorrow. Chatham Islands, cloudy with occasional drizzle. Fine breaks developing this evening. RNZ National, it's 8 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Susanna. Kia ora anō. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. More money is being pumped into walking and cycling initiatives as well as buses and ferries in Auckland. The government and Auckland Council has announced a $31 billion transport investment, building on a package announced 3 years ago. It's designed to help the city meet the challenges of climate change and housing. Kate Gregan reports.
The project aims to encourage people to ditch their cars in favour of public transport, walking and cycling. The Auckland Transport Alignment Project, also referred to as ATAP, is a 10-year investment plan and is predicted to increase the number of public transport trips by 91%. Auckland Mayor Phil Goff says the package will help address the huge backlog from years of underinvestment.
It's a transformation of our society from being car dependent to being like any other big city in the world and needing a really top-notch public transport system, and we're on the path to achieving that, and I welcome it.
He thinks Aucklanders will give up the comforts of their car in favour of public transport.
It is a big shift, but I'm confident that we're already psychologically making that change. There was a time, what I remember most is that when we decided to put in the Northern Busway, people said, North Shore people, middle class, they'll never use it. Now, 50% of the people coming into town from the North Shore travel by bus. Why? Because it's convenient, it's accessible, it's frequent, and you don't have to find parking.
Which Mr Goff says will also tackle one of Auckland's worst features.
Congestion is a critical factor in this city. We're fighting it all the time. This will allow us to make the best effort to get more people onto public transport and fewer cars on the road.
Mayor Goff and Transport Minister Michael Wood say these changes will help in the fight against climate change. Mr Wood says ATAP will decrease 13% emissions per capita when compared with the previous package.
This is the first ever Auckland transport package that starts to lower the average transport emissions of Aucklanders and starts our journey towards a carbon-neutral transport system in New Zealand's biggest city.
But not all issues have been tackled. The Minister couldn't say when Aucklanders will be able to ride their bikes over the Harbour Bridge.
We're still working on that one. You'll be aware that within the New Zealand upgrade package we've allocated $360 million to ensure that we give people safe walking and cycling access across the Waitemata Harbour. We're working through the options for delivering that now, and we'll have further announcements in the next month or two.
But the investment will fund a trial that will help 200,000 low-income earners. The scheme, called Community Connect, will begin next year. It will entitle community services card holders to a 50% discount on train and bus fares. Manukau councillor Efeso Collins says this will make a huge difference to the people in his ward.
I represent the poorest ward in this city. I know that many of our people are dependent on cars that are really old and gas guzzlers. If we can encourage them to get out of the car, to go to church, drop off the kids at school using the bus or the train, that's going to make a huge difference on their family budgets.
But he's concerned not everyone will take advantage of the scheme.
I think part of the challenge is going to be the stereotype they'll need to deal with in being eligible for a community services card. I know that there's a negative stigma sometimes of people feeling like, oh, you're just poor and you're bludging. When we accept that it's our rates and it's our tax dollar that is going to supporting them, then people are going to be fine with it. So you've got to get over that psychological barrier first, and then slowly we've got to get a good educational program into our churches and our communities so people take up this offer.
The package will also support the delivery of Kangaora homes across Tamaki, Mount Roskill, Oranga and Mangere. $400 million will be pumped into other things such as intersection upgrades, more bus lanes and station improvements. For Checkpoint, Kate Gregan.
After a 2-year fight to keep his name secret, boxer Joseph Parker can now be identified as the high-profile sportsman allegedly connected to an international drug syndicate. Parker was named in evidence in the 2019 trial of 3 men found guilty of trafficking methamphetamine from California. But Parker himself was never charged. A search warrant on his house wasn't executed because he wasn't home, and he refused to provide a statement to police. He's denied in a sworn affidavit any involvement in the offending and went all the way to the Supreme Court in his bid for permanent name suppression. But yesterday, the country's highest court rejected Parker's final appeal and gave him until this afternoon to tell who he needed to before his name could be published today. Speaking to media this afternoon, lawyer Michael Heron QC read a statement on Parker's behalf.
He said it's a terrible position to be in. Things have been said about me that are quite untrue. Some of them have already been proven untrue, and I was given no chance to respond at the time they were made. It's caused a lot of stress and worry for myself and my family, and it just seems totally wrong. Having said that, I need to accept the decision and get on with my life. I have other fights to fight.
Michael Heron was asked how his client explained messages between him and some of the convicted men that formed part of the Crown evidence at their trial.
Well, the answer to that, of course, is that these matters were aired in a trial that he was never part of and given no opportunity to challenge. He's not going to relitigate that now, but if they were to be raised in the trial against him, he could answer those.
In a statement, the police reiterated there was insufficient evidence to charge Joseph Parker as part of its investigation into an international drug syndicate. They said the investigation was thorough and Parker's status and profile did not influence its outcome. Nearly 2 years on from the massacre at 2 Christchurch mosques, a sharp focus remains on Islamophobia in New Zealand. While Muslims generally experienced widespread love and support in the immediate aftermath of the terror attack, others continue to receive hate. Some Muslims say while their personal experiences of Islamophobia is better since the attack, there is room for improvement. But a prominent academic says as time goes by, anti-Islamic groups are beginning to reassert themselves. Our reporter Anand Zaki has more.
It was about 15 years ago, but Aya Al-Umari remembers it well. She was studying at Victoria University in Wellington when her lecturer asked her where she was really from.
I don't know why he asked me at the time. He just said that there was no way that I could pass his paper because it was too technical.
Ms Al-Umari, whose brother Hussein died in the Christchurch terror attack on March 15, 2019, ended up passing the course despite her lecturer's doubts. It is one of many examples of racism she and her late brother faced prior to the attack, which was especially bad following the September 11 attacks in 2001.
That was the time when we experienced true Islamophobia in school. People knew that we were Muslims. Bullying, even people outly saying, oh, you come from the country where you kill people, things like that. This was my worst experience that I have lived when it comes to Islamophobia.
But following the Christchurch attack, Aya Al-Umari says there is greater awareness about Islamophobia and racism.
Any jokes previously about me being originally foreign, my religion, or being Arab, they've all stopped because everybody is aware that this is not okay.
Although that doesn't mean Islamophobia has gone away. Just 3 months ago, Ms Al-Umari and her mother were subject to vile abuse at a farmer's department store in Rangiora, prompting an apology from the local mayor. She says it's sad that it's taken a terrorist attack to highlight the racism and discrimination in New Zealand.
Absolutely, it is sad that it has ultimately meant that my brother and 50 others lost their lives. It really is, but it has shed a lot of light into something that we need to work on.
Ahmed Khan, General Secretary of the Muslim Association of Canterbury, says he too has noticed a decrease in racism. He says before March 15th, there was regular abuse.
Lots of people who were like staring and making racial comments and everything like this, especially towards our elderly group because they're wearing a traditional Afghan cloth.
Mr Khan says despite the situation improving since the attacks, there is still room for improvement.
Maybe the education will be a good thing to actually, teach them the different culture, religions and everything like this, to have a respect for each other.
Massey University sociologist Professor Paul Spoonley says there are signs that people with anti-Islamic views are beginning to re-emerge.
We've seen some examples of that. The attack on one of the victims' sisters in a Christchurch shop, and then more recently, of course, there was the police taking action because of threats made against the Christchurch mosque.
He says the terror attack was a real wake-up call to New Zealand, but wonders how long the sympathy will last.
If you look at the data, the survey data prior to 2019, there was a group that was hostile to Muslims, but there was a much larger group that was simply disinterested. And of course, the mosque attacks changed all of that. But as we move away, the empathy has tended to wane a little.
Paul Spoonley says when the history of the 21st century is rewritten, the terror attack will be one of the key events that define New Zealand, both domestically and internationally. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Anand Zaki.
It's 19 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. A free driving program for offenders has ambitions to start instructing prisoners on how to get a driving licence. For now, the program run by the charity Howard League helps people on the outside get a driver's licence, parolees, those on probation or people on home detention and community service. The organisation celebrated its success in West Auckland today, where they've helped 700 people. Chen Yu was there.
Jason, who went through the alcohol and other drug treatment court, was one of those who gathered at the Waitakere Railside Community Corrections site today. He has been disqualified from driving many times and restarted his learner's license with the Howard League a year ago. He received his full license 2 weeks ago. There were negative voices, but he kept going.
They tell me that I can't do it or won't achieve it, but those aside, Shannon had my back and showed me the ropes and I passed 100%.
Jason says he's thankful.
I can't listen to that thinking because it gets me nowhere. So today I got my full licence and I never thought I'd ever have that. So that's so cool and I've got a lot of gratitude.
Another man, Walter, was in prison for a driving offence last year. He was disqualified from driving. When he was on parole, his parole officer put him in touch with the program. Now on his restricted license, he says it felt good to be able to drive to visit his grandchildren.
They understand me, whereas from my past, I looked at the world like they hated me, but I feel good and I trust them.
Shannon Dunn, Jason and Walter's driving instructor, says it's been a privilege.
It's truly a blessing to be helping in your own community. Now, I've been around a little while now and you see people come and go, family's everything, so you sort of know what's happening in and around the low decile areas. So growing up in and around it, it's truly a blessing to be helping our people in our community.
Chief Executive at the Howard League, Mike Williams, says New Zealand has a high rate of incarceration. He says to prevent people from offending and re-offending, employment is key, and 85% of all entry-level jobs require a driving licence.
A driver's licence for a lot of people coming out of jail is a real silver bullet in terms of getting them work, getting them lives back into a normal society and supporting their families. It's really important.
Mr. Williams is delighted about what his charity has achieved, but he hopes more can be done in the future.
We should be offering this on a much broader scale, and our ambition, for example, is to get driver's licensing going in jails. And we don't think that people should leave jail without at least a learner's licence.
The Minister for Social Development and Employment, Kamal Sepuloni, says the program helps prevent reoffending and helps offenders with their future employment. The New Zealand Howard League now runs 17 driving programs across the North Island and one in Christchurch. Motahotaka o te ahiahi nei ko Chanleo tēnei.
Prince William has broken his silence regarding the claims of racism in the royal family made by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. He insisted to a reporter that his family is not racist. Nevertheless, it's becoming clear just how strained Prince Harry's relationship is with his family, as CNN's Max Foster reports.
Sir, have you spoken to your brother since the interview?
No, I haven't spoken yet, but I will do.
And can you just let me know, is the royal family a racist family, sir?
No, we're very much not a racist family.
A reporter breaking protocol with unsolicited questions, answered by a brother still not ready to talk. The royal rift never more apparent than just days after a scathing no-holds-barred interview in which Harry made allegations that will live with the British monarchy for years, if not decades. Prince William, still the heir. Prince Harry, no longer his stand-in. An ocean apart, but the distance between the two even greater.
The relationship is space at the moment.
That space confirmed, it seemed, on Thursday by the future King of the United Kingdom. A far cry from this.
He's definitely got more brains than me. I think we've established that from school. But when it comes to all that, I think I'm much better hands-on.
Well. When the gentle ribbing and teasing of two brothers who had been through so much showed just how inseparable their bond seemed to be.
It's boredom.
It's pretty rich coming from a ginger. These two young men who had grown up being watched by millions, living through the unimaginable tragedy of losing their mother as young boys, together, side by side, candidly exposing their pain.
We have been brought closer because of the circumstances as well. That's the thing. Yeah. You are uniquely bonded because of what we've been through.
Making mental health a joint centrepiece of their royal platform. At the time, both men aware of the duty their grandmother, the Queen, committed to a slimmed-down future monarchy, only adding to the burden they were meant to share.
There's a lot of times both myself and my brother wish, obviously, that we were just, completely normal. But we've been born into this position, and therefore we'll do what we need to do.
But after a period of smooth sailing, royal tours, engagements, weddings and births, rumours of turmoil within, becoming reality as Harry and Meghan took steps last year to stand back and ultimately to stand apart. Prince William reportedly saddened by the couple's decision. According to the Sunday Times, saying to a friend, "I put my arm around my brother all our lives, and I can't do that anymore. We're separate entities." Harry solidifying that separation in his sit-down tell-all with his wife to Oprah Winfrey.
He's my brother. We've been through hell together, and we have a shared experience. But we were on different paths.
And that report by CNN's Max Foster. It's a year since the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus outbreak a global pandemic. The virus has so far claimed about 2.5 million lives, but there is hope as vaccines are being sent to every corner of the world. And the European Union earlier today approved its fourth jab, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Here's the BBC's Naomi Grimley.
It's been a year that most of us will remember for the rest of our lives. One of grief and loneliness on a scale none of us could have imagined. It's exactly 12 months since the World Health Organization officially sounded the alarm about the seriousness of COVID-19.
We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
And yet, after a whirlwind of scientific discoveries, we're now seeing vaccines being distributed to some of the most remote communities on Earth. In Brazil, they've mounted a vaccination campaign reaching reservations and villages deep in the Amazon jungle.
I'm happy. We are grateful for the vaccination, so we will not catch the disease and my people will get better.
Because of a new variant spreading there, Brazil has seen some of the worst death toll figures since the pandemic began in the last few days. But overall, scientists are positive about bringing the pandemic to an end.
We're in a much more powerful situation because we understand so much more about the virus now. So I am very optimistic of the future. I think we have a better handle on the virus, and we're able to keep up, I suppose, with the race against an evolving virus.
Chile, Israel and the US have powered ahead. Faring less well are Brazil, Russia and China.
And that report by Naomi Grimley. South Africa's ban on alcohol for long periods during the pandemic has had a devastating impact on the country's world-renowned wine industry. It provides more than 265,000 jobs and contributes 1.1% of South Africa's GDP. It's harvest season right now, and hopes are a little higher than they've been for the past 12 months, as the BBC's Rodri Davies reports.
Grapes have grown well for generations on the Western Cape, but pandemic restrictions generated a question over whether they'd have anywhere to go. Gone were alcohol sales in South Africa. But now, here, harvesting is bringing a glow to winemakers. At the vineyard Himmel en Aarde, or Heaven and Earth. Earth, sun and cool Atlantic Ocean air provide ideal growing conditions. Conditions for sales abroad are maintaining its prosperity.
We're lucky on Hamilton Russell Vineyards in only selling, in my 30 years, on average about 7% of our wine directly. We almost refer people to retailers in the country of origin and say, rather buy it there.
Here, a modest production volume and a considerable reputation abroad are the foundations for good fortunes, unlike other business models.
If your business relied a lot on tourism or direct sales from the property, you were hit particularly hard, particularly if you also ran a restaurant on the property.
Winemakers in general have been pressed hard. Estimates put the losses in direct income at hundreds of millions of dollars in an industry that employs tens of thousands of people. Firms have been forced to close. But the country offers potentially quality Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grapes for winemakers.
We can have quite a lot of vigor in South Africa because of our sunshine and some of the soils. I think where we are, it's really nicely in balance, and we get beautiful, natural, low-yielding crops from our vineyards, and very nice small berries, good concentration, and we don't need to do much to try and extract from the Pinot Noir. It sort of comes quite naturally.
And knowledge of that abroad has protected producers.
And that report was from Rodri Davies in South Africa. Now, we're wishing you a very good weekend. Auntie Lisa's going to be looking after this little fur baby for the weekend if you're listening on radio. It's a little puppy. His name's Bernie. Good boy, Bernie. Enjoy your weekend. Mine won't be dull.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Boxer Joseph Parker wants to move on after the Supreme Court lifted his name suppression today, but says it seems unfair as he was never charged with any of the drug offences his name was linked to. The teenaged killers of Grace Virtue, who died after being attacked in her live-in home in November 2019, have been sentenced to prison and home detention. Team New Zealand has beaten challengers Luna Rossa with the biggest winning margin so far of the 4 America's Cup races to level the series at 2 races all. Aucklanders are celebrating the city's shift from